Listening on Audible helps your imagination soar. Whether you listen to stories, motivation, any genre you love, you can be inspired to imagine new worlds, new possibilities, new ways of thinking. Maybe you'll find inspiration in the incredible true story of Black female mathematicians at NASA in Hidden Figures, or the fantasy world of Throne of Glass. There's more to imagine when you listen. As an Audible member, you get to choose one title a month to keep from their entire catalog. New members can try Audible free for 30 days. Visit audible.com/imagine or text imagine to 500 500. That's audible.com/imagine or text imagine to 500 500.
Hello, welcome. Let's chat. It's hard. You want to talk? I know, that's disappointing. Sit back. Let's work this out. How's it going? What are we doing here? Where are you going? Hey there. Wow. It's not always easy. It's amazing if you think about it. Let's think about this. Strange. I have some thoughts about that. Life is hard. Trauma bonded.
Would you go to an adult theme park called Jams?
Only if it's with a Z.
Okay, it's 1999. So this adult theme park, it's just a bunch of clubs with like a boxing ring.
That's what I heard, yeah.
I feel like I can't really see you there.
Which one though? The one with the boxing or the one that I'm imagining?
The one I'm imagining.
No. See, I'm not going to the one you're imagining. That's disgusting.
Jams. Welcome to Trauma Bonded. I'm Elly Westberg, and I'm here with Therese Garcia.
Hello.
And today we're discussing the rebroadcast of This Is Actually Happening, episode 197, What If You Died? And this episode was first originally aired in 2021. Full disclosure, I am the showrunner for This Is Actually Happening, and I have the privilege to vet stories and conduct pre-interviews before they go to Whit for the final interview, and T knows nothing about anything. She comes in fresh. This show, Trauma Bonded, is for the listeners, a space where we can talk about each episode, digest it, and reflect on it with empathy and also a bit of levity. T, what stuck out to you is the heart of Jose's story?
I think the biggest thing for me was, I think it's when he's looking down at his body. And he says, "For the first time, I looked at myself with love." And I found that to be really moving. You know, there's always these ways we want to be perceived, right? And for him, it was like to be tough and strong, right? And then the way you want to be perceived is a way that you now have to like act that way and take on behaviors, right? Like you can't hold someone's hand, can't cry, right? He won't push that button, you know? And I just found that really powerful to see that change in him, to finally be like, I think it's that shedding that like actually he was able to like look at himself and be like his real self, not like all this ego and all this other stuff, and look at himself with love. I think that was kind of the biggest thing. Yeah. For me, that was good.
I agree.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That stuck out to me as a big thing as well. I think, we all have the things that we hate about ourselves, right? That we look in the mirror and wish we could change, and it's a constant re-echoing over and over again about all the things that we hate about our physical bodies. And rarely do we ever look at it as a thing that gets us around or gets our oxygen to our brain or, allows us to pick up our kids or our pets or whatever. We never look at how wonderful it is. There's always this examination of the flaws. And it felt like for the first time he really saw it for how beautiful it is. Therese, you've heard my Andre Agassi dream, right?
I don't think so.
I feel like this was a big turning point in my life. I mean, granted, I still hate a lot of things about my body all the time, and it's constant reverberation in my head about things that I hate. But this was a moment where I actually saw my body as a wonderful thing. And long story short, when I turned 30, I noticed a patch of psoriasis on my leg, and it really bothered me. And it was new, and I didn't know why I had it. And um, basically found out that that was a thing that I had now. And it slowly started to creep up my legs, and I hated it, and I had no idea how to stop it. And it was just this like new thing in my life that I could not stop or control or understand. And the doctor said they didn't know what to do about it. And it now became this other new thing that I hated about myself, right? And I hated this about my legs so much. And one night I had this dream, and I was dating Andre Agassi. And for the kids out there, Andre Agassi was a famous pro tennis player in the 90s. I had this dream where I was dating Andre Agassi, and he said to me, Elly, if you love me, you will cut off your leg. And I was like, yeah, Andre, I love you. So in the dream, I had my leg cut off, right? Totally fine. Wearing a prosthetic, totally fine. And then he says, Elly, if you really love me, you'll cut off your other leg. I was like, whew. Okay, Andre, I'll do it for you because I love you. So I cut off,
Both?
yeah, yeah. So I cut off both my legs, and I have on these prosthetics. And I remember I'm walking down this like cobblestone street, and it's really, really hard to walk in these prosthetics. And I think to myself, oh my God, what have I done? Why did I do that for Andre Agassi? What kind of asshole is Andre Agassi that he would ask me to cut off my perfectly healthy legs? And I was like so mad at myself in the dream. I was so mad that I kowtowed to a man, that I did this extreme thing for a relationship.
I know.
And it felt like this inescapable reality that I had basically subscribed to. And I remember I woke up in the morning and I realized that it was a dream. And I'll never forget it. I threw my comforter off my legs and I kicked them up in the air, psoriasis and all. And I was so happy that I still had my legs. And it was like, you know, I tried to analyze it, and the only thing I could really come up with is it was like my subconscious was telling me, like, despite their flaws, there's still these wonderful things that get you around. And, they might have this condition that you can't take care of, but they're still your legs and you should love them. And I'll never forget that. I try to remember that anytime I start to feel like I hate a part of my body. I try to remember that moment. And I was so happy just to have legs.
Is that why I have so much hatred towards Andre Agassi? Can you tell the listeners what you then ended up doing?
So, well, as a way to sort of embrace the condition, I decided to have a tattoo pattern follow my psoriasis patches. So I just had flowers drawn around each tattoo patch as if it was the center of a flower. So now when you look at my legs, and the thing about psoriasis is the pattern changes and the patches move different places. Now when you look at my legs, you can see there's this old pattern of psoriasis that aren't there anymore. But yeah, so I tried to lean into my condition and just camouflage it basically, and it ended up moving. But again, when I look at it, it reminds me that our body is always changing, and it's never going to be perfect, and to embrace your flaws.
That's beautiful, Elly.
My heard of the story, and I kind of came up with it last minute, to be honest. I listened to this one a few times. I think it's the need for human connection I think the need for human connection is one of, if not the whole entire thing behind humanity. And it's expressed in touch and in words. That desire to feel cherished or cared for, to be enveloped in someone else's senses. It's like it means that you're real. You can't exist unless you're perceived through someone else.
Yeah, that's a really good one, Ellie. But yeah, I was thinking about like somebody read some book about, I'm totally gonna mess it up, but kids that weren't touched, or like hugged or
Yeah, attachment.
Ended up really having some issues later in life.
I mean, that's well documented in serial killers.
Yeah. And as a mom, I'm like, of course, whenever there's like anything, if they just want to hug or if they got hurt or whatever, always gonna help out.
Yeah.
Like, never gonna like suck it up. Like I don't understand that mentality. Or that like somehow me doing that encourages them to be more needy or something.
Or weak.
Or weak. I feel like it helps you get stronger, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think to be able to really connect with a person, it does take a ton of strength. It takes a ton of vulnerability. It's those shells that we put up
Yeah.
and surround ourselves with to protect ourselves that we call or categorize as macho or machismo or alpha or whatever, but it's actually quite weak.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of strength to open yourself up to someone. I mean, obviously, Jose's story is incredibly, it's incredible. It's incredibly sad. It's incredibly moving. His grasp of what happened to him, his way that he speaks, like he truly is an artist. I mean, I'll be honest. The first time I heard this episode, I didn't entirely believe him. And I don't know why that is. And maybe it's one of my own issues. But listening to it again and and honestly looking at his art, I finally looked up his art and like everything kind of clicked for me in the moment. And I totally saw him in a different light. I completely trust his point of view. Did you look up his art on Jose Hernandez fineart.com?
I didn't. But I really want to after this.
I know, you come in
I try not
fresh.
to look at anything.
In his episode he talks about becoming color. It is that personified. That is his medium.
Yes.
It's him becoming color. They're beautiful colorscapes. I don't know how else to describe them. But the way he talks about being in a ball of color and becoming color and journeys into color, it feels like that's what he actually did end up painting as part of his healing process.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's amazing too that he'd never painted before or ever had the desire to, but now it was like an overwhelming need.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about his childhood.
Yeah, it seems like it was really tough, especially his relationship with his dad. I mean, his whole history is like there's violence and anger
Yeah.
and abuse.
I think what stuck out to me the most was him talking about like being in a street fight as a kid. Okay, so I come from, it's not suburban, but it's probably more like farm country of Indiana, right? And when people would go to fight, usually it was a couple of white dudes like pushing their shoulders up against each other, like hoping that someone would break it up so they wouldn't actually have to like throw punches, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And when there was an actual fight, usually it was between women. And I think and I'm not a fighter. I would never put my hands on someone in that kind of way. I'm scared to death of it, to be honest. But my perception of those kids that were always fighting was they were pushed into it in some sort of peer pressure. And when the cheering happened, it was just like that peer pressure getting more fire underneath it, right? Just the peer pressure. But what he said is the cheering made the anger okay. It was as if the cheering was not just cheering on the fight, but cheering on the anger. It was saying it was okay to be angry, and you
It's
could like,
validating the anger.
yeah, and it's this
Yeah.
emotion that you have predominantly. And God, how good it must feel to feel like people are saying all this anger you're feeling all the time as it's coming out in this moment, it is right, it is good, we encourage it. And of course, it's going to keep that fire going and make you punch harder and keep going longer. And he also talks about it being a recognition of being, so you're not invisible. And it just it illuminated kids fighting to me in this whole new way that I never understood before, because I don't have that perspective. I come as a I come from a home, even though it's flawed, I've always known what it's like to feel completely loved and taken care of, and never had such anger. And
Yeah.
he became his dad that he hates. I mean, it was always inevitable that we were going to become things about our parents that we hate, right?
I'm really fighting against it as hard as I can.
I think, as we go on and we as the generations generate and we know more about psychology and family dynamics, and we understand that it's inevitable that you're going to become your parents, and you're aware that you don't want to be that, and you're actively fighting against it. I mean, that's really all you can do, right? I mean, to have the awareness and call it out when it happens and try to stop it.
Yeah, I mean, you have a little bit more insight about my mom.
What, you think I know your mom better than you?
No, I think you know my mom and me a lot, so you would know if I'm turning into my mom. And sometimes I look at you to see if that's happening. I don't think it is. To the listeners, Elly was a caregiver for my mom for several years. How many years now?
4 years?
So you have some intimate knowledge of how my mom is. And so sometimes I wonder if you see things. But there's no way. I'm nothing like her. I'm total opposite.
But I don't think she's as bad as you think she is. I think she gets more intensely bad when you're around, because that's like a pattern that you guys have, come up with the last 40 years. But I think she has the capacity to be really cool. Sometimes I think it's just about your audience, man. Like, there's so many lovely things about her.
Oh, I totally agree.
No, but I think she's genuinely funny. She's funny. She's dark.
She's not funny.
Yeah. But I'm saying there could be worse people to take after.
Of course, no, I think she's a good person. It's good. It's fine. I think I was poisoned by her belief system, which was her religion. And that's what I'm not going to get into that, but I'm just saying that's what
We don't
kind
want to
of.
be called anti-religious.
But you know who used to be anti religion was Jose. I like what he said about, he's like, oh God, you know, religion, more like a business, fear based.
Business, fear-based. Nailed it.
And I was like, yes. I was like, thank you. I was like, this is what I've been trying to say. And then he's like, never mind. But
Right. And he's still not wrong. It's not like you can't hold both ideas in your head at the same time. You can believe that you had like a death experience and experience what you perceive as heaven, and you can still like criticize the modern church. You can hold these ideas in your head at the same time.
oh, of course. I hope that people are, willing and able to do that.
Yeah. Can I tell you something? My dad died recently, and I've been doing this thing where I don't pray to him, but I just, and it's just sort of organically started happening. Like I just started talking to him. Like, I'm going on set, Dad. Like, let me see things through your artistic eyes. Because he was an artist, like that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me feel like better, like because I don't know what happens, but
Right.
I do think our energy is a remaining thing, and I don't know if it's literally him around me, but it makes me feel good to know that he is sort of there in this space.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, him passing sort of made me realize that all of our life is pointed toward death. It's this inevitable thing that we can't escape. So when generations or people before us, and again, this is talking in like the way it's supposed to happen, not like a tragic death or something out of the ordinary, like when people die young, but like just the literal, like generation to generation dying of old age or dying when you're after you lived a full life, like what you're talking about, your kids, they're so young, and death is this inconceivable thing to them. And I remember maybe not being that young, but I remember being young, and I would cry myself to sleep at night thinking about my parents dying, right? Because it's ugh, it's
Mm-hmm.
such this overwhelming burden of life. And what I realized with
I
my
know.
dad dying is it's like those deaths that happen before you are just a way to keep preparing you for your own. Like you really start to see it as part of life. Sorry.
It's okay. No, it's you can cry.
As you get older, age and experience gives you the capacity to be able to understand that life has to end in death, and so that you can accept it easier when you're an adult. As we get closer to death, as we ourselves get closer to death, we should be able to have the capacity to handle it more as we see more people die around us, because we are constantly trying to make sense of what happens and what becomes. There's the idea of finality. It's so scary. There has to be something else. And I don't know what it is that is, but I do believe that there is something that goes on. I guess my point is, I don't know. I don't know if you're ever gonna, at this moment, be able to tell your kids the right thing. Because when I was your kids' age, I was being told that if you didn't accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you're going to spend eternity in hell. That was at Arlo's age. I was hearing that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not getting that. So I feel like whatever you're doing is probably better than that.
Okay, well, that's encouraging.
So what have you decided?
I think the way that you're handling it is actually a really good way. I mean,
Yeah.
there's like a human connection there, or a connection. Could be like a pet or something. Um, that'll never go away. You could talk to them, tell them about your day.
Yeah.
You're always connected.
It's so sad that he still, even in the moments before he died, that he couldn't say the words, I love you.
Well, it's hard. It's so much. There's a lot there.
And then, of course, it makes sense that that would come back into his subconscious when he's actively dying, that he would see his father and be able to say that to him and hug him. It's wild to me how much gravitas our parents get, right? I mean, or in practicality, actually, they are quite literally the most important people in your life, be it good or bad. The impact they have is immeasurable.
I mean, we are who we are because of them.
Exactly. And it always astounds me, even when we've had terrible experiences with our parents, that we still always have this desire to be close to them in some way. He said he hated it when his father was home. He was happy when he was gone.
Yeah, he looked forward to the weekend so that he'd be gone.
But he wept when he died, and probably part of that was from the lack of connection that he probably would have happily accepted, but he just wasn't given the chance to. And then when he himself dies, the premonition he has, the ghost he sees in his death dream is his father.
And he feels safe knowing that when it's time, his father will come get him. Even though for all of his life, I mean, I don't think his dad was necessarily a safe place for him.
But he somehow became one.
After death.
Right. It's like he saw how he himself transformed, so he gave that same transformation to his father.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about Y2K?
Okay.
I don't know if anyone under 23 is listening to us, but Y2K was a real thing. I remember going to Y2K preparedness meetings. Oh, yeah. People were buying guns and feed.
Feed?
My dad, rest his soul, who my whole life was a pacifist, he bought a gun.
Oh my God, for Y2K?
And I said, Dad, what are you going to do with that gun? I mean, he's a pacifist through and through. He's like, well, if if people are if they come into my house looking for food, I'm gonna be ready. And I was like, so Dad, a hungry person comes to your house looking for food, you're gonna shoot him? Is that what you're gonna do?
Is that what Jesus would do?
He was full of shit. He never would have hurt anybody. Okay, so did you figure out how Jose was dying or in death?
Well, it seems like, well, he was allergic to, well, Tylenol, it sounds like, right? Which is why they gave him Advil. Yeah, it's because of his Advil allergy, right?
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
So he goes in a ball of color, and well, first he sees a shadow in his room, who he refers to as a she and her. He talks about that's when he talks about loving his body for the first time, and then he's in a ball of color, and he becomes color, and he journeys into nature, and he becomes nature, and he sees his father. Right?
You're really flowing through it really quickly, but I'm just saying, the way he tells it, like I could feel it. I mean, as he was telling it, I was really kind of believing it.
Well, I'm glad that you just said that, because my question was, and this might be the ultimate question of the episode, is do you think he literally died and he went to quote unquote heaven and it was all real?
There's so many levels to that question, I feel like. Because, I mean, there's yes, he died and experienced those things completely. And then there's everything in between, like his subconscious, the pain, even just hearing like code blue, does that start to influence how you might be thinking about things as you're going into a totally different state of consciousness? But I mean, the way I tried to kind of not think in those ways as I listened to it and just kind of like feel it as he was feeling it, So I tend to believe like maybe that happened, but I don't know if heaven is, I don't know if death is, I know that he experienced it, whatever it is.
You just accept it as face value, at face value.
But it could be, I don't know that he met his dad and they talked about it or not talked.
Well, I mean, honestly, I think that is ultimately what the answer is. It's his perception of what happened and his story to tell. It's not verifiable because that's the nature of death and dying. It's his perception of what happened, and I think we should accept it at face value. And I know people have accused us of being anti-religious, and that might be true. We are anti-religious, as insofar as what the modern church might offer people as far as religion goes.
Though there are reasons for that. It's not just because we randomly.
Yeah, we're not just dead.
We have a whole history of why.
We've earned that perspective. And I know during the Hoyt episode we called into question like what being spiritual meant. And I honestly believe that came from like an honest place. It wasn't like us just being cynical assholes. Like we seriously want to understand what people mean when they say that. I do believe that there are planes among us that we can't see and we can't perceive exactly. And he talks about after he came back into his body and a woman comes in, and I think it might be a nurse or something, and she has oil in her hand and she touches his head and he goes out. He describes what I would describe as like a fallout in the spirit. And it's like warm and it's wonderful and it's peaceful. And I have also felt that. And it was real. Like I went up in front of a church and a hand was laid on my head and I fell out in the spirit. And it was nothing that I didn't do it on my own. There was nothing I did. And I don't know what that was exactly, but I do believe that human connection, going back to the heart, one of the hearts of the story is human connection is so incredibly powerful. And it is a major tenet of like the evangelical church. It's all about touch. You have to the laying on of hands, the touching of the head, the contact. That's all intentional, right? We have to be touching each other for the spirit to move. I believe that there are powerful things that happen when that happens. Whether it's due to religion, I don't know that, but there is something powerful in the human connection of touch.
No, I 100% agree with you on that. And I think, our view on organized religion doesn't negate the fact that we think that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. T, do you think other planes exist in this universe?
So many.
Yeah.
Everything is happening all at once. Everything is.
Exactly.
Life exists everywhere at the same time.
Yes. We're not atheists. You're not an atheist.
Well, I'm not.
I'm not an atheist. Well, now we're going to offend the atheists, but we're not so conceited to believe that we're atheists.
Well, I'm very close with some atheists.
I love atheists. I love religious people too.
I love religious people too. I just don't know what the hell's going on, and I don't think anybody actually knows. So
yeah, we just don't know what's happening, and we're okay to say that. And the stuff that's bullshit, we're gonna call bullshit. And sorry, that's just how it is. I think we should talk about his final takeaways.
Mm-hmm.
His takeaways, his end points are how I process love, and it's the only thing that matters, which I completely agree with. I loved this, what he said about this. He said, everything in the universe is giving. And he talks about water. Like, for example, water, when it quenches your thirst, it's as if water is loving you. How beautiful is that? I have like this whole new appreciation for water, for sunlight, for spinach, for wine.
For trees.
Yeah, just...
He was big on the trees. Well, you've always had an appreciation for wine, Elly. Let's get real.
I'm into all of that. If that's spiritual, call me spiritual. I love all of that. I love looking at it like that.
I loved all of that. I wonder if we could get a follow-up.
I bet we could. Oh, and for our listeners, just so you know, we are going to have a follow-up from our storyteller in episode 128. What if your son stabbed your daughter? That storyteller has come forward to us and said that she would be happy to do an interview, and we're going to try to get that on the book soon. And so we should have an update from her. And I would just like to shout out to our listener, Zach Conrad, who emailed us and said that he was really enjoying our companion podcast.
Hey!
Thank you for listening. This has been an episode of Trauma Bonded. You can find our show where podcasts are kept. If you like us, please rate and review us on Apple or other places. Please compete with our favorite negative review. Rival that review. Write something beautiful and lovely if you like us. Please, we are not begging.
You seem to be begging.
Thank you to Jose for sharing their story and giving us the opportunity to talk about it. And thank you to the This Is Actually Happening team, including Whit, Missildine, and the maker of our music and our website, Nathaniel Jamboli. Thank you to Cathy Sites for editing this episode. You can contact us at traumabondedpod@gmail.com and find us on Instagram at traumabondedpodofficial or visit our website at traumabondedpod.com. We are trauma bonded to the story, to the storyteller, to the listeners, and to each other. Thank you for spending time with us today. Love you, T.